Bum 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 bum. The Peter Like Show. Bum 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 bum. All right, I just come off of a 19-hour fast. I had a really good dinner. My taste buds get enhanced a lot when I fast like that. And you know what? Come to think of it, the whole trip to Taiwan, I don't think there's been a day where I didn't fast at least 17, 18 hours. And it comes second nature to me. And unfortunately, something about my workplace. I'm going to have to do some soul searching when I get home. But something about my workplace environment makes it challenging for me to successfully fast 17, 18, 19 hours, or sometimes I do longer ones that are 30 some hours. What I'll do, I always fast at least 17 hours, right? But occasionally I skip the entire eating window, so it's really like a 40 some hour fast. I've done a couple of those too here in Taiwan, not as often as I do the 17-hour fast, but one thing I noticed, this is my best explanation for this. One of the biggest tools you can put in your pocket when you're having a craving, let's say you're 13 hours into the fast, right? You're having a craving. That's pretty typical, right? What a lot of people don't realize is that those cravings only last a couple of minutes, right? One of my favorite tools to use is to remind myself I can always have that food later, right? And usually the craving will pass, right? I'll laugh about it. Now, the problem is that two problems. Number one is that depending on what you do at your job, you might not be allowed to eat at your desk. If you work retail or something, I encourage you to break those rules because this is your health we're talking about. If you need to eat in front of customers or students, do that first. I mean, do be sensible about how you do it, but do it. That's what I'm gonna do when I go home. But number one, so the idea that I'll come back to it in half an hour might not work so well. If half an hour you're going to be in some kind of environment where you can't eat. And number two, what was the other issue that comes up? Oh, a lot of times, even though the craving might only last 5 or 10 minutes, those 5 or 10 minutes can be very difficult to focus, right? If you're doing something that requires great attention, especially something dangerous, right? For me, the most dangerous part of my job is probably the commute by far, right? I used to teach. I worked at a tutoring center. I would teach chemistry, and I would do chemistry experiments to show that it wasn't really part of my job, but I always loved to go above and beyond with the students, right? I can't be weathering a craving when I'm doing something like that, right? That's the problem, right? So I'm gonna have to think hard about that former part of the equation. I'm just gonna break the rules. Now, I personally think if you manage a place, I don't know how many of my viewers are HR people, do not restrict eating for your employees unless there's a very good reason for it, right? So, for example, if attention is needed, heavy machinery, driving, okay. If there's toxic chemicals, if there's the radiological chemicals, okay. But just because it might look bad, just because it's not the social norm, health is more important. Let me get that out of the way. Now, as the caveat is that people need to be mindful about how they're eating. Obviously, a lot of your colleagues may have food allergies or chemical sensitivity. Mindfulness about not getting your food everywhere, that's important. Now, I always wonder why there isn't a whole lot of education about it, right? I fly a lot. Sometimes I'll get on a plane where they'll announce that somebody has an allergy to whatever. And so, I never tell people sitting next to me not to eat something. I always tell them to be mindful not to get their food everywhere. It's a lot easier in Asian cultures, especially if I can speak Chinese to the person. For some reason, Americans get really offended when you tell them how they can eat, right? They'd rather be told they can't eat whatever food item than to be told how their mannerism about you. I don't know why it is, but I think I know why there isn't a whole lot of public education about how to be mindful not getting your food everywhere. I think the problem is if people started to be more mindful about how they're eating, a lot of people would realize that, oh my God, I don't need to eat so much. Do you remember 5 years ago, before you could dig into your favorite food, you had to wash your hands and you had to remove a covering. And by the time you did that, a number of seconds will have passed. And a lot of times that desire wasn't as strong as when you had it, right? If you could mindlessly reach for something, right? I think the food industrial complex realizes that the less friction there is between you and reaching your food, the more you'll eat, right? A lot of eating probably doesn't happen at a very intentional level. Another thing I invite you to try is to do it for a few days, just for like 3 days. Write down everything you eat, and then at the end of those 3 days, measure out that amount again, and put it in front of you and look at it, right? And so, see, if people could actually see what they're eating and think about what they're eating and what it entails, and oh yeah, I gotta keep it to my area, I gotta think about it. A lot of food cravings would pass by the time you went through the motions of doing that, right? And I think the food industrial complex is really scared of that concept, in my opinion. I really despise public venues that don't allow you to bring outside food. Again, assuming you bring it and you're mindful about being considerate how to eat it and not bothering other people. I really despise. Now, true, there are accommodations, right? If you call them ahead of time and you tell them you have allergies, but here's the problem: a lot of these places, movie theaters or bowling alleys, you're going there with a group of friends. A lot of people might not want to make a big deal, especially if you're going on a first date. Do you really want your first impression to be that you have various restrictions? I mean, you do have to tell people that once you get to know them, but do you really want that to be the first thing that somebody hears? In my opinion, the only reasonable accommodation is to just go by an honor system. You know, encourage people to eat whatever's in your movie theater, but understand that if somebody brings something, you just trust them. That's the only reasonable ADA accommodation I could think of. Anything short of that, it might as well not be there. Quite frankly, I'd rather there not be an ADA accommodation, because now you're just trying to sneak food in there. I'd rather be a rule breaker in front of a first date than somebody who's high maintenance, right? So the ADA accommodation actually does the opposite of what they think it does, right? It's really stupid if you really stop to think about it, right? So again, if you own a movie theater, number one, serve things that people will actually want to buy. Then you won't have to worry about it. And on the occasion, obviously, no matter what you serve, there's probably somebody who really can't have it for whatever reason, or they just don't like it. But hopefully that will be a minority, and you can live with that, and you can be diverse about it, right? And definitely education about how not to get your food everywhere. I think this should be something that we learn. You know, I used to work at a tutoring center. I would tutor 4th, 5th, 6th graders who would learn all about sexual education. And during the pandemic, they learned about washing their hands, but none of them ever learned about how to keep their food to their area. Again, because obviously the government has been paid off by the food lobbies, who know that any little friction between you and your food, oh my God, I'm going to think about how I'm not going to get my food on my classmate's desk. I might as well not have it. I don't want it anymore. After you think 2 seconds, sometimes the craving passes, right? This is the Peter Like Show. Bum 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 bum. The Peter Like Show. Bum 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 bum.